Greetings and salutations all. Welcome to this regularly scheduled board meeting on Monday, the 25th of September. It's now 5:35 p.m. Our apologies for starting a few minutes late. First, we're going to move to item 1.1, the appointment of Dr. Thompson as the Treasurer Pro Temp, and roll call. So be it resolved pursuant to Section 3313.23 of the Ohio Revised Code that Dr. Stephen Thompson is hereby appointed as the district's Treasurer Pro Temp to perform all of the duties and functions of the district's regular interim treasurer during the period of this meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Vice President Autry. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Molnar. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Ms. Autry.
Yes.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Dr. Molnar.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Next, we're going to move to the Pledge of Allegiance, item 1.2. Dr. Molnar, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next we'll move to my favorite part of the agenda, and that is the community and school reflections. Are there any community and/or school reflections? Ms. Jackson, do you want to start us off?
Thank you, Mr. President. Since the last time we met, myself as well as you and Dr. Molnar had the privilege to attend the CUBE conference in Chicago. It was focused on urban school districts, and I thought it was very informative. It was nice to hear about some of the innovative practices that they were doing to get gains, some of the same things that we were talking about. One of the districts that were highlighted was Ferguson. And when they talk about the different strategies and how collaboratively they came together, both the board, the members at their central office, as well as members within the district, the teachers. And I think they said they had like a 30% academic gain in their state test scores. And one of the things that really stood out to me is how they stress phonetic awareness. Mm-hmm. And how it's important when we talk about reading guarantees and equipping our children, and how we know the connection between illiteracy and dropout rates in prison, the pipeline to prison. It's important that we, especially for inner city youth and urban school districts, really get back to highlighting that findings and phonetic awareness, and how they think that help tremendously lead to some of the academic improvements they've seen within their district. So I thought it was just very, very informative, and it was good to be in such a setting to learn about different resources, and also to hear about things that they were doing that were innovative that I know we're already doing in our district. And so that's encouraging too, because it highlights that we know that we're on the right track, and so we should see the return on our investments. And as I say, it's just about that accountability, and really how are we measuring our success, how are we evaluating it, and the transparency that comes with that. So it was just good for me when I go to these conferences. I look for those type of takeaways, and how then to better relate and connect when I'm seeing teachers and people in buildings, students and parents, as far as needs and what you've been hearing teachers say for some time. Like, we don't have to keep switching the curriculum over and over again, where we have to learn a new curriculum when we already know best practices that get results. And we can differentiate learning, but sometimes the main thing is the main thing, and the main thing gets results. So that was one of my biggest takeaways. So I was glad, and I want to thank you all for the opportunity to go there.
Roger that. Are there other? Oh, Mr. Perry.
Sure, thank you. So last week I had a tremendous opportunity to spend a bunch of time at our local NIHF STEM middle school. As you know, my fifth grader is there now. And I was there last Thursday for the Father's Walk, which is always a great event. I've been obviously every year they've had it, and it's a great thing is to see all the other dads and father figures who come up to support, the children at the school. So that was a great event. But I wound up staying to see the morning meeting they have there. And somebody I know who's really smart always says excellence looks different. And so I was there.
Who says that? Wait, who says that?
Someone I know who's very, very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Miss Jackson. Miss Jackson said that. But Excellence looks different because it was a fun event. They made it fun and exciting for the kids. You know, while I was there was kids who gave presentations. There was actually a group of kids who sang 2 songs in Chinese. And I don't know Chinese, but it sounded good. There was probably 20 or 30 kids who got up on stage and sang 2 songs for everybody that was in the room there. So that was fun. And then on Friday, I chaperoned the 5th grade school field trip to Bath Nature Preserve, which I've never been to before then. But that was nice. It was eventful, be outside with all the kids. I want to thank Principal Morgan, Coach Crum. You know, we had the best group, you know. So we got to walk on the trails and learn about different things, and that was a great time. So had a good time with the STEM family there, and looking forward to doing that again for sure.
Roger that. Thank you, Mr. Perry. Are there other community and/or school reflections? Dr. Marnar.
Thank you. I also wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to attend the CUBE conference. It was very informative, and it was my first time as a board member to be around board members from all over the country of urban schools. So I made a lot of connections and learned a lot there. I also wanted to mention the Father's Walk, and I guess back to Excellence Looks Different. Even though I was driving and I am a mom dropping off at Firestone, I still got a sticker because family participation sometimes looks different, but we were still there. But I'm happy to see also on the websites the updated pictures of all the dads and all the families and all the kids. And then Friday, the September 22nd, I went to a Resnick Connects meeting. Mrs. Wamis, Mrs. Murray, and Mrs. Angelo were introducing the elementary IB curriculum to parents because we are one of the few districts with IB elementary schools. And it was a really wonderful meeting because they talked about their vision statement. And I did not write down the vision statement, and they said, well, we recite it every morning. So when I was preparing my notes, I asked my kindergartner, this is the 5th week of school, I said, what's your vision statement? He goes, I don't know. I said, what do you say every morning? And he did. He recited it word for word. We are becoming internationally minded, lifelong learners that take action to improve our world. And what they discussed in the IB curriculum meeting with parents, we unpacked each of those sections, internationally minded, lifelong learners, and taking action to improve our world. And the parents in this meeting were so motivated. Actually, Mr. Perry, we were talking about you. Oh. The parents in this meeting were so motivated to take action to improve our world, they decided to start their own project. So we will see how this evolves. But anyone who drives down Market Street at drop-off or pickup time near Resnick knows that we used to have a liaison, Mr. Perry, who helped smooth the traffic and help direct and open doors. And I have more than my fair share of photographs that I've taken of other parents and their creative decision-making while driving into Resnick. So groups of parents are going to try to fulfill the role of Mr. Perry. So I hope to have an update soon as we do that. And then the last community reflection here is on Friday night, I went to the Bookdale-Ellett football game, which I love fall football games. To me, that's just an annual tradition. It's not fall without pumpkins and football. And the community series football games are the best because it's Akron versus Akron. So no matter what, we win. No matter what, we cheer. And then also, I love the bands. So Bookdale's band Bookdale's band had a great performance. They had Michael Jackson songs, but then Ellett's band played Beyonce. And so all of the practice, hundreds of students and their coaches put in countless hours for us, for our entertainment. And I just really hope that everyone, whether or not you have a high school student, please come and support our kids at the football games.
Thank you, Dr. Molnar. Appreciate it. Are there other community and/or school reflections? Vice President Autry.
Thank you, Mr. President. So since we last met, I had the opportunity to visit Higher CLC. And so that was my first time visiting them. Very beautiful building. And so they were presenting to their scholars the nonprofit partners. And so that is our theme around college and career academies at that level. And so each partner introduced themselves and shared their mission. There was the Soapbox Derby, there was the zoo, there was the library, there was the Akron Canton Food Bank, there was Humility of Mary Housing, and 4-H. And there were students who had to get in front of their peers and share their field trip and volunteer experiences. And so they were very nervous, but they did a really, really good job. And so it was just a pleasure to be there. And just thank you to those partners for investing in our students and showing them that there's other opportunities in the world that they can use as employment. Also, even though I wasn't able to attend, I saw a lot of pictures as well of fathers and father figures and families taking our students to school. And it was just amazing to see, even at the high school level, I saw a lot of men. And so sometimes we hear that narrative that parents don't care, fathers don't care in particular, but they do. They show up every time. And so shout out to all of those dads and father figures and families who showed up for the Father's Walk. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Austrie. Are there any other community and/or school reflections? Okay, I'll just add to what was being said about the CUBE conference, Council of Urban Boards of Education. The main takeaway for me was the accountability piece. It's one thing to say that you believe in equity, and equity is a big part of everything you do, but also tying back KPIs to that. So how is it manifesting in actual performance? How are we evaluating programs that are equity-based or have equity red-threaded through those programs? And so there were several districts that were presenting that I thought did nice jobs of kind of demonstrating where they're at in that journey. And so looking forward to, under Dr. Robinson's leadership, moving our ball forward as he and Dr. Chapman work to move advanced equity initiatives here in Akron. And so I know that one of the things that we talked about, Dr. Monar and I were in a session, and I rather pointedly pointed out I'm sorry, that was a double, whatever that's called. But just pointing out that that too often districts are concerned about funding each school and each pupil the same equally, and that where there's still work to be done is figuring out the financial component of it, right? So how does equity translate into individual school funding? And so the response to that meeting was that they're doing it at the school level, but folks really haven't figured it out at the individual student level. So anyway, so I think that again, I'm looking forward to seeing what we're going to do in this space as we move forward as well. So I'll leave it there. So thank you, appreciate it. Next we'll move to, we have no request to address the board that I see here. And then we'll move to recognitions. Item 2.1, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. In 2017, Akron Public Schools launched our College and Career Academy model, in which we transformed education in 3 primary ways: small learning communities, thematic learning, and business partnerships. We have seen significant positive change as a result of our transformation and are fortunate to have so many exceptional organizations partner with us to help prepare our scholars for success after graduation. They do this by providing engaging, relevant, hands-on experiences related to a scholar's pathway. In February 2018, Kent State became the named Academy partner for all 3 of Firestone CLC's academies. These partnerships meant they agreed to give nearly 700 hours of time and talent each year for each of the 3 academies. Some of their engagements included serving on the Academy Advisory Board, participating in career expos, college visits, industry field experiences, and inquiry-based learning projects, providing summer camps, and much more. But that's not all. In 2019, Kent State University also became a pathway partner at Bookdale CLC and at North High School. Pathway partners agreed to provide a minimum of 2 engagements per year. It will come as no surprise that Kent State University went above and beyond. Some of the experiences they provided for Bookdale and North include developing an experiential learning plan for future educators with the focus on helping them to acquire college scholarships. Some scholars had the opportunity to be a professor for a day. Kent State also participated in scholar ambassador interviews, provided guest speakers and job shadow experiences, and advised on an upgrade to the Education Pathway Lab to better reflect a 21st century classroom. They worked with Summa Health, a named academy partner at Bookdale CLC, to provide the community health worker one CCP course culminating with all number 6 participating scholars becoming certified as community health workers. We're thrilled to note that in August, Kent State agreed to renew its agreement to be the named academy partner for the 3 academies at Firestone CLC and a pathway partner at Bookdale and North for 5 years. That's not all. Kent State University also agreed to become the post-secondary partner for Bookdale and Firestone. As the post-secondary, our sister partner, Kent State University, will be providing an additional 800+ hours of time and talent to each school each year to assist with college admission preparation, such as FAFSA sessions, ACT, SAT preparation, co-design inquiry-based learning opportunities, provide a summer enrichment program, and much more. So it is my honor and pleasure to recognize Kent State University, represented tonight by Ms. Sonia Williams, Executive Director, Office of University Outreach and Engagement, and the APS Partner Liaison, who would like to say a few words. We will welcome you. Ms. Williams, thank you.
Thank you so much. It is really an honor to be here and represent Kent State. I'm an alum of Kent State, so I've been a Flash for a long time. But to stand in this space and represent the Provost Office and our President, Todd Dykin and Dr. Melody Tankersley, and all of the colleges that are a part of this agreement. So it's an honor, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I highlighted were the number of invested hours. I work very well with Cassandra Hanna, Coach Hanna. I don't know if she's here tonight, over at Firestone, and Beth Winter, who is here tonight. These are 2 of the hardest working people in Akron Public Schools. Yvonne, I mean, I can name everybody. And we would not at Kent State be able to do our jobs with providing access if it were not for some of the people that are in this room, some who are not there. So with Cassandra's help so far, and Deanna over at Bookdale, and all these other folks, we've already upwards of 3,500 hours that we've committed, time, talent, and treasure to students at Akron Public Schools. We have been in the district a long time. We've had the TRIO Upper Bound programs over at Bookdale for years. We've had the federal grant since 1970. We have the I Promise students that are entrusted to us throughout the year and through the Summer at Bridge program. We have First Star Academy, which is a program that focuses on students who are impacted by foster care. We get all of our participation through the College Access Office, through Beth Winter, through Yvonne Culver, through all of these folks who say, hey, we want to provide opportunities for students. And it's not always necessarily about college access, you all. It's about providing opportunities to exposure. And I know one would say, you represent Kent State, it's all about enrollment, feet on the ground, butts in the seats kind of thing. And it is, but it's also about building good citizens. And so that's a huge part of what I do every day, but I couldn't do it without our College of Aeronautics and Engineering, Architecture and Environmental Design, the arts. We have the design innovation, and the students absolutely love that initiative. And then visual communication and design. We've been able to touch 9th through 12th graders for years. We've been able to engage in every academy pathway that we've been asked to. And I just want to say again, we formalize the relationships with Bookdale and North, but there is not one school that we say no to, right? And so we have, of course, the Firestone, but if it's East, actually, we're at East now for Upper Bound. So, but if it doesn't matter, Garfield, you name the school, we are there. My kids are a product of Firestone. And I'm telling you, my heart is with this district. Kent State is with this district. I wanted to mention that if we were not present, oftentimes we know that some students would be left behind. That's not who we are at Kent State. I stand here representing our institution for every student. If you're thinking you might want to go to college, it doesn't have to be Kent State, but here's some information for you. That's what we do. It's important that I mention our summer institutes, and so we talked about, it was mentioned in the intro about summer experiences. We have bridge programs at Kent State University that allow students, when they graduate from high school, Flashes Strong, STARS, the Architecture and Design program, the Summer Institute, that allow them to get 6 credit hours free. Housing is free, meals are free, and they get to take 6 credit hours of college courses towards a degree of their choice. And so these are the kinds of opportunities that our office is responsible for providing, where we get to say, listen, if you don't know, parents, talk to us. FAFSA is changing, you all. If I don't say anything else, remember that. The FAFSA process is changing. A part of our agreement allows us to meet with every school in Akron to be able to provide this new information. So what we used to know about FAFSA is changing. Just know that it's as of December of this year, that process will look different, and we want to make sure every family is engaged in that process and they're prepared. And so we're very fortunate. We're doing some of our advisory board meetings, classroom advocacy. We're having folks from Kent State come and teach in these classrooms. The trips to Kent, Lord have mercy. Just good stuff. Every year we have tons of students coming to Kent State. We have Senior Day through Yvonne's office. This is our 3rd annual Senior Day. So every senior in Akron Public School who comes, they get to walk the campus, eat the food, meet college professors. We have a fair, if you will. If you're not sure what you want to do, we help figure that out. We offer micro-credentials. We are clearly aware that everybody's not going for a 4-year degree or a 2-year degree, but we are offering micro-credentials on our campuses. We have 7 regional campuses. So I'm thankful for the opportunity. I can go on and on if y'all can't tell, but this is really a passion for what we do. Our president was intentional in creating this office, and so we're blessed to be able to help lead that space. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. We really appreciate everything that you guys do for our scholars, and we're grateful for the partnership and fortunate to have so many who believe in our scholars and are working with us so that our scholars are best prepared for a successful future. Kent State University sets an example of excellence for all, and we appreciate everything that you do. Let's give them another round of applause, please.
Okay, next we'll move to, we have a second recognition tonight. That is the Mayor Youth Leadership Council presentation. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to introduce the Mayor Youth Leadership Council as they come to the podium. Fallon Forney, Natalie Lombardi Schubert, and Samantha Richmond will provide an overview of the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council. Under the Scholar Voice Program, high school scholars across the district will be part of the council. Ms. Forney has taken over the lead on the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council program after the previous leader, Myra Snipes, retired. She knows the ins and outs of the program and is building off of Myra's amazing ideas. So we'd like to say welcome to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. So my name is Fallon Forney. This is Natalie and Sam, as he mentioned. So we're just going to talk more about what the Mayor's Youth Leadership Program is. And just like a slight overview here. So the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council program is comprised of high school students throughout the city of Akron, both public and private schools. And the overarching goal is to teach students how the city runs. So government behind the scenes tours, things of that nature. Immerse them into leadership building workshops and promote volunteer efforts throughout the community. And they'll receive volunteer credit that goes towards college with those volunteer efforts. So the goals for our program is to, throughout the year, is to have different workshops that will help them with public speaking and leadership engagement workshops, building their leadership skills as they go out into the world after high school. We'll have financial literacy training, media training, well-being initiatives, and behind-the-scenes tours, again, of different facilities throughout the city of Akron. So you can see these are some of the highlights of that. So government tours of like the water plant. We'll be doing a partnership with the Akron Historical Society, the You Have a Voice 2 Mayors, the You Have a Voice 2 Leadership Summit, and then college and career planning. We have a scholarship resource guide to help them apply for scholarships as they prepare for college. Different community activities. Hugs and Gloves is one that we'll be doing at different locations throughout the city to donate hats and gloves to families that need them. This is just an example of the You Have a Voice 2 Empowerment Summit, and this is hosted by the Akron Historical Society. So we'll be doing this in early February, and I believe it's at the JCC is the location that we'll be doing that. We'll have an urban journalism workshop, and that is by Cleveland Media Academy. I think it's important for students to know how to communicate on a social platform, so we'll be providing that training to them. Just trying to provide them with more tools for their toolbox as they go out into the world. So. We'll be also having a Toastmasters public speaking training for the students. I think it's important for them to be able to share their voice and do so in a productive manner that is communicative. So we'll be leading that as well with the students. Goal setting. So we'll be doing vision boards, and this is really just to start that conversation about what is next after high school. So helping them to build a success plan for the future, also engaging parents to have that conversation with them, to hear what their students would like to do next, whether that's college or trade school or what have you. So the requirements for the program, so this is students in grades 9 through 12 that live in the Akron corporate limits, both public and private schools. So we definitely want all students from all areas to apply. A cumulative 2.0 GPA or above is required. And again, attending a school in Akron corporate limits. Our sponsors, we are grateful for our partners. We have Goodyear, Akron Public Schools, Student Voices. So the Goodyear Scholarship is something that we have to apply for, but we have received that grant from Goodyear, and so in partnership with them, we're able to provide all of these different workshops for the students. To apply, if you know students that may be interested, because we definitely want to engage our students, they can either scan the QR code or you can go to governmentjobs.com/careers/Akron, and then they can search for MyLC, which is Mayor's Youth Leadership Council. And what questions do you have?
Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your presentation. Can they be rising ninth graders when they apply?
At application ninth grade or above. So when you say rising, like the next school year, like
No, yeah. When I say rising, I mean I finished 8th grade, and now it's the summertime. So if technically I'm a ninth grader, can I apply at that point?
yes, because we start in August with all of our efforts. It goes from August until May of the next year, each year.
Okay.
So it's cyclical each year.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Are there other questions? Vice President Autry?
Thank you for your presentation. How many students are in this program, and how often do they meet?
Meetings are once a month. In the last program year, we had over 100 students, so we don't have a max or a limit. We have a pretty sizable contribution from the grant, so I think we can allow all students to apply that meet the curriculum requirements.
Ms. Autry, do you have any more questions? Okay. Are there other questions from board members or comments? Ms. Jackson?
It goes without saying what a great program, right? Cultivating young people to be leaders within our city and letting them see the various roles and places within our city of other leaders and to be mentored. My question is, how many of these students may go on to develop like real mentorships that could matriculate into possible career opportunities, or that have matriculated into career opportunities that resulted in them staying local, even going to school locally and then being employed locally?
I think that's a great question. I don't have the stats for that, but that's something we can definitely begin to track and show what that looks like for the program.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions or comments from board members? I just had a couple questions. So first off, thank you for the presentation. So just, I guess, piggybacking off Ms. Autry, you mentioned approximately 100 students in the program. What's the approximate, not exact numbers, but just ballpark? I mean, what's the split between students who attend APS and non-APS schools?
You want to speak? No? Okay.
I don't know the exact numbers.
Yeah, so I would say it's primarily like Akron Public that we've engaged, but that number is actual students that participated in the last year. We don't have like a cap. So as many students want to participate can. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
No, it does. It does. I guess I was trying to figure out how many of the kids that participate are actually APS students versus private school students. So
We don't have prior year metrics right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And that dovetails into my next question, which, and you may have already said this, and if you did, I apologize. How long has this program been in existence?
For at least 5 years. So the previous HR director from the city of Akron, 5 years at least, goes back to I want to say at least 2016. Okay. But keep in mind, like, we have a new mayoral transition coming in, and then I'm filling in now for a previous leader that is retired. So there's a lot of transition of information. Okay. But I can look into getting you those stats and bring that back to you.
Okay. And then my last question was just, and again, you may have already addressed this too. Is there, for the students who are seniors, are there scholarship opportunities? I mean, you mentioned the college and career planning piece, but is there a scholarship that the city gives to seniors?
Yes, we do have grant money that goes directly towards scholarships for the students. And they even like certain events that they attend. For example, there's a mentor-mentee training program that they can go to, and we'll pay for the training, and then they can mentor other students, and they get a stipend for that while they're in the program.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, Ms. Jackson.
Just walk me on down the aisle. Okay. In regards to the scholarships, what's the average award amount of the scholarships provided?
$1,000 per student.
So like a book scholarship. And then are there any relationships and connections with putting them, for instance, like Kent State, to get additional monies if if they're in your program and they're looking like, I don't really have enough money to go to school. What do those partnerships look like for the students participating?
So the great thing about us inheriting this program is that we get to build in these new ideas.
Excellent.
So that after hearing you speak with the Kent State Partnership, that's definitely something we want to work in and incorporating. We don't have that incorporating right now, but again, you've got some great suggestions, so we'd love to speak with you further about your ideas as far as what we can add to the program, because we would really like that to partner with the Kent State.
Absolutely, thank you.
And I'd be remiss. Is this one of the students right here? Are you one of the students in the program?
No.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to ask for some student voice. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But did you go through the program? I mean, were you?
I
Oh,
graduated
okay. Okay.
almost
All right.
6 years ago.
Okay. I thought you brought
She
someone
has
from
a
the program to
youthful
talk
glow.
about it. Yeah, you do look young. I was like, oh, okay. I was going to ask you what you thought about the program going through it, but okay, gotcha.
I think it's great. I just haven't been through it.
We had a recent scholar, Swoop, Elvin, I can't think of his first name, something with the E, Swoop. He just graduated. He also was Evan Swoop. He was a participant in this program. Wonderful young man. He also was the recipient of the Judge Hero Case Stuff Scholarship in the previous year. And so you guys are doing some really great work. And I'm just asking questions because great work needs to be highlighted. And so I'm going to end this questioning with, how is this information being communicated with scholars? Because I meet with I see a lot of kids when I'm walking around, when I go to schools and visit, when I'm talking to them around the way, as we say. And we have so many programs that students have no idea about that would greatly benefit.
We have our milec.org website, milecakron.org, and then DREAMA has also been very helpful in getting the word out to the schools.
Oh, yeah.
They already know when I call because I kind of just called each school and they were like, DREAMA already told us.
Yeah, if DREAMA knows, you don't even have to say anything else.
Yes. So reaching out to counselors and coaches. So thank you so much, DREAMA,
DREAMA
for that.
definitely.
We also have a Instagram page. So being mindful of how students communicate now and promoting it on social media as well.
I need to make sure I follow you on Instagram.
Yeah. What's the Instagram address?
It's Akron, MYLC.
Ms. Whitfield, did you want to add anything?
No, she really answered the question.
Okay.
We are actively recruiting students. Recruitment week started this week. We had counselors, teachers, and principals nominate students who would be interested, and I've been meeting with them starting today, seeing who's interested and recommending students for the program. Our goal is to have at least 5 students from each building, so anywhere between 50 and 75 students from Akron Public Schools will be participating.
Okay. Awesome. And yeah, my apologies for assuming that you were still in high school. I apologize. Some would take that as okay. All right. Is there any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you, Connie, for your time.
Thank you. Who's next? IT?
Okay. Next, we'll move to item 3.1, our 5-year forecast position. Dr. Thompson.
I know this is the absolute highlight of the evening, isn't it? We get to look at numbers and get really pumped and excited. Marcy told me that I'm supposed to tell a joke, but I'm so lame I can't even think of a joke. So that's my joke, right? So we'll just move on. So we have the 5-year forecast. It's a little early, and the impetus for being a little bit premature, a little early than what you might normally see is really twofold. The first and most important reason is because we have to present to Standard & Poor's in Chicago to obtain a credit rating. And obviously you're not going to obtain a credit rating without an updated 5-year forecast. So that is the purpose of coming early. The second piece that it does allow us to do, as we move into the numbers, there's always certain line items on any 5-year forecast that could be debated. And one that definitely could be debated on this 5-year forecast is the rate of increase for health insurance premiums. You look at historical data, but historical data is somewhat mixed in terms of we haven't seen inflationary rates that we're currently seeing. So I'm going to gather more data, and before November's submission, if I feel like that I'm comfortable in bringing that percentage down, which is at 7% right now. If I feel comfortable bringing it down to 5 when I have some real actual numbers in, I'll bring it back to the board, which would only help our 5-year forecast, not negatively impact it. So it will only go positive if we move in that direction. But these are the base assumptions in this 5-year forecast, that those recurring ESSER expenses, in other words, those are primarily staffing people that were paid for, or programming that was paid for with ESSER dollars. Those expenses are now back against the general fund. It includes the reductions that Dr. Caver and Mrs. Outley put together. It includes reductions based on the closing of Firestone Park and both ELP buildings in fiscal year 25, which is the start of next school year. Updated revenues based on most recent conversations regarding property values and state aid. So again, a bit complex here, but property values in the city of Akron went up 22%. As a result of that, your taxes went up. But the question is, did revenue increase for the school district as a result of that increased property valuation? The answer is no. And why is that, Ms. Autry?
House Bill 920.
Thank you. House Bill 920, Google that. I'm not going to go through that tonight, but House Bill 920 freezes collection rates at when they pass in perpetuity. And while other taxes might have risen, collections for the school did not. How that negatively impacts us, though, is in the state funding formula, they calculated at a higher value, which means they reduce our state share. So this worked against us. If we pass another levy, we can pass a lower millage levy and collect more dollars. So if you pass a new levy, it's beneficial, but as of right now, it only serves to really reduce our revenue. And then 5% increase on commercial property, which in our forecast, it's usually between 2 and 3% is what we normally expect. So you can see jumping to 22% was well beyond what anyone would have assumed. It assumes that we're going to continue to lose students and decrease student population. We put $30 million of ESSER money back into the general fund. It assumes that this is the base scenario throughout this entire 5-year forecast. It adds the debt payments based on the debt schedule for the COPS deal, and it includes a 4% budget reduction in fiscal year 25. And let me be very clear what that means. 4%. 4%. That's a small percentage. We have declining student enrollment. Simply by right-sizing each year through attrition, which you can get through attrition, we shouldn't have any issues getting our 4%. But this isn't just people. It's reductions. Could be a program. We could have a duplicitous program and cut out the duplicitous program and save $500,000, for example. So there are multiple ways to address this, but it should not send concern to anyone. But it is pivotal that we make these reductions to stay fiscally solvent the way that we want to operate, which is in black through all 5 years. So here's our 5-year forecast, and what's really the most important line is that very bottom line, ending cash balance. Those are large numbers. The total budget somewhere, you can see, gets up to $381 million for a total budget. But we stay in the black all the way through the 5-year forecast, albeit in 28, that's about as razor thin as you can imagine. This does not include any passage of a levy. So we are in solid financial shape, but we're also levy imminent. Because we can, as you look at the line above, the revenue surplus or deficit, you can see that we start to go into deficit spending. And again, is deficit spending avoidable in public education? No, it's not possible because of House Bill 920. In other words, just picture if you were hired today at your current salary, you pay your bills, but could you pay those same bills, escalating bills, 5 years later, 10 years later with the exact same salary? I would submit to you, you could not. And that's what House Bill 920 does to our local share of property collections, tax collections. I wanted to give you this as a comparison. So I picked 3 urban school districts. They were random. I would have put more up here because they all look very similar. What you're seeing in that first graph is Cincinnati, the middle graph is Columbus, and the graph on the right is Toledo Public. Look how all of them are showing deficits, and this doesn't show 28. That last year of deficit for all 3 of those districts is 27. So the idea that public schools in Ohio coming off ESSER, most of them across the state show deficit numbers in their 5-year forecast, and we do not, with this couple of simple, straightforward moves on our part, fiscally conservative moves will ensure that we don't go negative. So just to give you a little bit of breakdown, this is our current projected revenue, $376 million in that green box. Our projected expenditures, you can see we're not upside down heading during this fiscal year, and we should add roughly $9 million to our cash reserves. Going from $95 million to $104 million is what we're estimating. Next, you're seeing just a summary of our tax revenue and totals and where they go, where they're coming from and where they go to. Real estate property, $111,000. Public utilities, about $14,000. The Fair School Funding Plan, which is House Bill 33, that's that new passage, that's $151 million. Restricted aid, $38 million. And then state share of local taxes. The state pays people back a certain percentage, the rollback back to homeowners. It's a fairly complicated process, but it's in state law, and that's $13 million. And then other projected revenues, you know, interest on our earnings, et cetera, et cetera. We don't just let our money sit in the bank. We invest it the best that we can. And then you can see in that graph to the left, the state funding is about 54%, local 33%, and all other revenue 12.4%, to give you a breakdown of where our funds come from. In terms of our expenditures, we're projected to spend $314 million. And that's in personnel cost. So you can see the largest share of what we spend our dollars on are people. Is that unusual for a public school? Of course not. We're a service industry. We don't make widgets. We don't buy raw materials. So almost all of our costs are in people. Our projected current year purchase services, things that we purchase out, about $30 million, and then all other expenditures like fuel, et cetera, at $23 million. So when you take a look at that, you can see that almost 86% of our budget is people. And that's not unusual. That's pretty straightforward in public schools. What it does do, it makes it difficult sometimes to cut expenditures because you have so many bus routes and so much gas and so much electricity you have to buy. And the same thing happening to you all in your homes is the same thing happening to us here in Akron Public Schools. Our bills and utility bills are skyrocketing as well. So this graph just gives you, basically, you can look at those black and gray box up above, and it gives you revenue versus expenditures. And you can see we start going into negative deficit spending. And this just gives you the rate of change, which I thought was interesting in our revenue at 2.31% increase, but our expenditures are at 3.58. And obviously, that's unsustainable over a long period of time. So we have to reduce our expenditures or increase our revenue, or both. This is important to graph just to give you, to illustrate, well, how much money does $100 million give you? Well, that gives you roughly 85 days of our expenditures. But you can see all the way to the far right, when we're at $2.2 million, that covers 2 days of expenditures. I don't think anybody's real comfortable with that, but it's not a negative number. And then this is our student enrollment, projected student enrollment. You can see our projected student enrollment declines. And when student enrollment declines, what also declines? Our state share of funding. And this is our general fund expenditure per student. And then you can see, where does our per pupil expenditures supported from? State, federal, business taxes. And then about 18% is Class 1 taxpayers, which are homeowners. So we've talked a little bit about levy schedules, and I know that there's probably not a single person in here that doesn't have an opinion about when we should be on the ballot or when we shouldn't be on the ballot. But from the treasurer's perspective, I simply need to know March 19th is the primary for the spring. It's not in May, it's March 19th. You have to back that off 100 days to file. There are 2 resolutions that must be approved by the board, resolution for a need and resolution to proceed on 2 separate board meetings. So that would be November, would be the last that I would feel comfortable getting that done. So, and then of course there is the general election, presidential election in November as well, but that's for another discussion. We'll, just administratively, Dr. Robinson and I need to understand, and the administration, the district as a whole needs to understand what the intent of the board is moving forward. So I'll turn that over to you all.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. So I'll open it to my board colleagues first. Any thoughts, comments on levy? I think what we're trying to get to here is, does this body desire to move forward with taking the necessary steps to getting levy on the ballot in March 19th? Now, of course, there are the formal meetings that would have to happen in November, but I think tonight what Dr. Thompson is looking for is sort of the okay to move forward with those formal steps in November. So is that correct?
That's exactly right.
So want to open the floor just to get any of my colleagues' thoughts or questions or comments on the idea of moving forward with a levy in March. Vice President Autry.
So a lot of this was covered in our recent Finance Committee meeting, and I know the board probably recognizes our need for this. I also think it's important that we get out into our community and see what the questions are. One valuable piece that I thought Dr. Thompson shared at our Finance Committee meeting are some of the things that were expressed via social media, misconceptions, and I think it's important that we get out there and maybe debunk some of these things and answer any additional questions. But speaking just for myself, I'm in favor of moving forward because we might get 2 bites at the apple, but I want to be positive about it. I know we keep hearing about a levy can't pass, but then we see all the support that we get from partners who show up for our students, fathers who show up with their students, board meetings that are filled up with passionate people. And so I just want to lean on that because that's where our strength lies. And so I would say we do need to move forward, but I'm also in favor of taking some time to get out and speak with some of our constituents to make sure we're answering any and all questions that we can.
Thank you, Ms. Autry. Are there other questions or comments from board members?
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the same mind as my colleague, Ms. Autry there. I mean, we obviously know, being at these meetings and being in the financial committee meeting and hearing the presentation from you, Dr. Thompson, what kind of financial situation we're in, which is a stable situation right now. But we need to make sure that we look out for the future. And we need to make sure the next 5 years are as good as they can be. And I think a levy should be on the table for sure. So I'm fully in support of us being on the ballot in March.
The one thing to remember, I think general public probably doesn't generally understand or know, is that if a levy passes in March of 2024, we wouldn't receive a full collection until 26, a half collection in January of 2025. So the dollars really lag pretty far behind. So you might look at the 5-year forecast and say, well, geez, you don't need that until 26 or 27. If you're not thinking that it's a year out, then a half collection, then a full collection. So it can be a little bit misleading. And the second piece to have a discussion about is when we went through LTOP was comboing a PI levy for the purpose of North High School, if that's on the table for discussion or not on the table for discussion, would have to also be finalized before I have drafts made of what the need and proceeding moving forward. So I don't know if that's something you want to make another board meeting for, or you want to have that discussion now, but and I could bring back some numbers and start modeling for you as well. Well, what does X mills do? What does, to give you a better sense of, because we're also going to have to determine how many mills that we're going to ask for, and does it combo with the PI levy?
I think it's also important for us, especially as board members, when we're in our communities, to talk about the actual facts of all this. I want to make clear to the public who's watching and everybody who's here today that, we talk about Akron being declining enrollment for the last, several years. That is not unique to Akron.
No.
People hear that and think that, okay, well, Akron is not good. It must be doing something wrong. But that's all over the place. It's not unique to Akron at all. Our schools are stable, but we're losing students like every other system probably in the United States, I would imagine. So that's not unique to us. One thing I also hear is people say, okay, why do you need a levy when you're losing students? Why do you need more money if you're losing students? But the answer lies in what you said with House Bill 920, right? We're not getting more money when property taxes increase by 22%. That's not us getting more money. So you made a good point about, having the same salary now in the next 10 years, the cost of living goes up. So if I were to keep my same income now in 10 years, I'm going to obviously not be as well off as I am right now. So that's very important to realize that APS, we get money, but it's obviously not, it's set by House Bill 920 how much the school system actually gets. So it's very important people know the facts before they decide what they're going to do with this levy. We made a promise when we were talking about LTOP. North was going to be on our radar. We weren't going to forget about North. And that's very important. I'm going to keep my word to North that, we're going to push for this levy. I think we should be on the ballot. And we made a promise that I want to keep to them for sure.
13 years since the last levy. In Ohio, the average school district is on the ballot every 4.5 years for new money, and we've gone 13. That says a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Ms. Jackson, do you want to jump in? Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also agree with Joe, but I think the cautionary part is that when you ask a community for money, you have to be mindful of how that community feels as though they've been treated, and the relationships within that community. So, Joe, when you talk about us being very transparent and clear when we're communicating certain things to the community and what we present as a board, as members of the APS community, whether you're a teacher, administrator, staff, whatever you do, what's being communicated about the organization also is what sells or doesn't sell the organization. And when we talk about declining enrollment, it's people who can live in the district. If their kids don't go to this school, then, why would they pass a levy? So I think the relational part of that is very important. And when we talk about North, it's just so interesting with the plans of the district and the portrait of a scholar and diversity, equity, inclusion, when the most disenfranchised community is the community that is levy imminent, that people have to come out and vote. So you think, what does that look like? How do we activate that as a board? What is our social responsibility in regards to the North community that is full with a high migrant population? How do we properly communicate the need and how it would directly impact them? What steps are we going to take as to really inform the people and to activate the people who are mostly affected, just like the decisions that were made that's impacting them anyway, right, with the choices that we made. So I am for the levy. I think the levy is very important, but also these real conversations are important as well. And as we always say, we're better together. And when we have these real conversations, not these, because it's good we can sit around here and talk about what is needed. But if we're going to be in a community, that 85.5% personnel, that's where a majority of the costs at. If somebody said, let's flesh that out, Treasurer, what jobs are those? Who's getting, I'm just saying, if I'm a community member, that's the type of stuff I want to know. So if you trim some of that, what's that? Or some of the other things which you were dispelling, Dr. Thompson, in the meeting that we had. Those are the real conversations that need to be had with the community, allowing the community to express what they need to express, but have an answer, a true answer, not a fluff answer. Because I don't know about you all, but when I'm in the community, people are speaking to me as if they have serious receipts to prove what they're saying as far as mismanagement of funds and how we haven't been good stewards. So I want to be equipped with facts. If I'm going out and telling stakeholders, listen, we are Akron, and we must invest in our schools because our schools can foreshadow what Akron is going to look like and be. We are interconnected. And there's no way to get from that. And we talk about community partners and people coming down. People that don't live in Akron can't support an Akron levy. So there's a lot of people that may come down and have comments and want to rally and pack this place out that don't have a vote because they don't live in our community. So what are we doing really to speak to the people in our community? How are we serving the people in our community? Firestone Park parents, that's our community. I Promise parents, that's our community. We talk about community partners and some teachers that may not even live in a district. What are we doing for those first contact people in our community, and how do they feel about us? What type of customer service have we given them that would make them not want to stay in the district and to pass a levy? And again, I live in Akron. My taxes will be affected. I'm voting for a levy. I vote for a levy even when I wasn't on the board because I believe in my community and in our schools. But this is the thing, we have to be real with this and about choices and decisions that we have made. And we need to sit down with our people from our communities and really reason together and move forward together of what that really looks like in a very realistic way. And that's, making it very plain to everyone.
Well stated.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Are there other comments or questions from board members? So I have some. Okay. I have some comments. One, I would echo the conveyed sentiments of Ms. Autry, Ms. Jackson, and Mr. Perry. I just add my own 2 cents here, no pun intended. But number one, I think the takeaway, and there are some takeaways here, right? Number one, we are solid financially as a district. And I know that I've gotten phone calls from folks, concerned that there's been a different narrative put out there that we're not. We are. And everything that we're talking about tonight, all the documents around the finances, is all public information. There's other documents that are included in our board docs, which is available to the public as well. So to borrow from Ms. Jackson's vernacular, when we talk about that we're fine financially, we have receipts to support that those statements. Number two, the enrollment story that Mr. Perry got to, the graph you showed, Dr. Thompson, only went back to, I think, 2018, 2019. But if we went back 10 more years before that, we would see declining enrollment the preceding 10 years. And so part of this is about dispelling this narrative again that the drop in enrollment is a recent phenomena. It is not, for the reasons that have been articulated by Dr. Thompson and by Mr. Perry. One thing I've been asked is why aren't there more questions about this particular topic when we talk about five-year forecasts from board members? And my response to that is we have a process that we follow. That process includes everything that you saw talked about here was talked about in our finance committee meeting that we had last week. That was also live streamed, and 5 of the board members here tonight were there for that and asked a ton of questions. And so for folks who are curious, you can go back and you can watch that finance committee meeting that ran a full hour plus, where we were grilling Dr. Thompson, in the most positive, productive way, with our questions. And so that's why, you're not hearing as many questions being asked tonight, because we've already asked a lot of them in a previously public form. Next, I think to Ms. Jackson's point about the community being supportive of a levy, part of this too is finance is very technical, can be very technical. And one of the challenges is how do we translate what we discuss in finance committee and what we discuss here, how do we translate that into lay terms for folks who are not as, who don't work in finance, candidly, right? Trying to understand that a mill, and what does a mill even mean, right? And House Bill 920, I'm working 3 jobs right now. I don't have time to go look up House Bill 920 and what that means, and by the way, I don't have time to go back and watch the hour-long finance committee meeting from last week, by the way, because I got mouths to feed, I got light bills to pay, right? So how do we use our marketing and our communications apparatus to effectively communicate to the lay folks of our community, and that also includes how do we partner with folks like the Akron Beacon Journal, who's represented here tonight, and how do we partner with IdeaStream, who regularly reports on our activities, because again, these are other folks that we should be working with to ensure that there's a message that is out there that is A, accurate, and B, mentally palatable for the folks who are for the folks who are receiving it. I think the penultimate thing I was going to say was we say oftentimes, and there have been editorials about this, that as APS goes, so goes the city of Akron. Where the rubber meets the road there is the passage of levies. And, approximately 75% of Akron residents don't have a kid in Akron Public Schools. So it gets back to why should I be voting for an increase in my taxes? Right? We know we have people who are on fixed incomes. We know we have a high rental population. So, we pass school levies. Guess what? That gets passed on to people who are renting, right? And so part of this conversation is also about educating as well as informing around. Well, when I say as APS goes, so goes the city of Akron, what does that translate into? What does that translate into? Right? It translates into better public schools, tie into better higher property values, and the maintenance of higher property values. It translates into higher community employment rates. It translates into lower crime rates in our communities, right? So the folks who may not have a kid in the public schools, if you live in Akron, you have a vested interest in supporting Akron Public Schools, regardless of where you choose to send your children. But all of these are things that we have to find a way to translate into talking points, if you will, that folks can get behind and understand. And then Dr. Thompson, so having said all that, I'm supportive in moving forward with that levy conversation. Generally speaking, right now, 1 mil is about $3 million to us, right? And so with a 22% increase, you could argue that we could ask for a millage that is 20% below what we may have asked, in order to keep pace with what we got last time. I'm not suggesting that we do that or recommending we do that, but I'm saying, but we could do that. Part of that too is with the PI levy, we could pursue a separate PI levy that we could combo together. But also, for transparency's sake, even if we did not pursue a PI levy, we could use funds from an operating levy to fund capital expenditures, which is not the recommended way of doing things at all. But something that in a worst case scenario we could do. But my recommendation to this group is that we would move forward with and keep both levies on the table, a PI as well as an operating levy, and just to ask you, Dr. Thompson, to model that for us. Because we may say, well, maybe we'll go. Well, I don't want to put numbers out there. I'll defer to your expertise around that. But again, looking to model, what is the give and take if we went for a higher operating or lower operating? Does that allow us to go with a higher PI levy? And then kind of educating the public around, well, what do you use a PI levy for, right? So we could talk more about that as well. But again, so all that is to say, it's kind of a long-winded soliloquy meant to convey support for moving forward with both an operating and a PI levy, keeping both on the table. We can always remove the PI levy from the table. I'm just suggesting that we have both modeled for us as we move forward over the next several board meetings. And I'll conclude my remarks there and take any additional commentary or questions from board members. Dr. Marnar.
Thank you for all of your presentations, and what has become abundantly clear to me from all of your presentations is that the financial situation that we're in is a policy problem. And when I visit ward meetings and everyone has questions about their taxes, the misunderstanding and what we need to try to communicate is, even though there's a new funding formula, there's a problem that we need a levy for. At some point in time. I mean, even if that time isn't now, the only solution to that, because of our policy situation, is with the state of Ohio, is through levies. And at some of the meetings I've been to, people have said, thank you for not talking down to me. Thank you for explaining this in another way. So I know that you've done a really great job communicating that here, but taking those talking points out to the community and informing them of those, I think, would be really great ways for people who, even though they might feel like they don't have any more tax dollars to give, they can still advocate and understand, because we are all neighbors. It's all of our taxes, it's all of our community, and I think it's critical that we also see with the PI levy for North, because this is for all of us.
Thank you, Dr. Molnar.
And can I just ask a quick clarifying question? I know what the answer is, but I want to make sure the audience knows. When you were referencing policy, you were not talking board policy, you meant state policy, correct?
Yes,
Thank
sorry.
you. I just wanted to make sure no one misunderstood.
Oh, yes, so
Thank you.
all 920 to roll all of it,
Yeah.
yes.
It's not district policy that's driving this.
All right, so I think you have your answer,
Okay.
Dr. Thompson. I think, so the other part here, and I don't know if you want to comment on this at all, but we do have a resolution in place tonight to approve the current 5-year forecast that you all just saw presented. I believe Ms. Autry has a recommendation from the Finance Committee regarding that. Did you want to make that recommendation now, Ms. Autry?
Yes. So from the Finance Committee that we had Monday, there seemed to be agreement around accepting this, and so I would like to bring forth from the Finance Committee a recommendation to approve the 5-year forecast for fiscal year 24.
Okay. So let me kind of repackage that just a bit. So on the table is, for Ms. Autry, is a recommendation from the Finance Committee that we adopt the resolution. So, Ms. Autry, you're recommending, so basically you're putting forth a motion to approve the resolution for the approval of the 5-year forecast.
Yes.
Roger that. Is there a second?
Second.
So seconded by Ms. McKittrick. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mrs. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, colleagues. Next, we'll move to item 4, which is the approval of the previous meeting minutes from 9/11. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Vice President Autry. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Perry. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Mrs. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Molnar.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
All right. Next, we'll move to items, personal recommendations. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. I want to recommend the approval of the personnel recommendations presented in categories 5 through 17.2.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Perry, seconded by Vice President Autry. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Molnar,
Abstain 8.2, yes on the rest.
and Mrs. Autry.
Abstain 7.2. Yes on the rest.
So the motion carries 6-0 with the exception of 5-0 on 8.2 and 5-0 on 7.2.
Roger that. Okay, next we'll move to the approval of resolutions and motions in the consent agenda. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hall. I wish to recommend the approval of the resolutions and motions presented in Category 21. They are in proper format, and I move for their approval.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve.
It's moved by Mr. Perry. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. McKittrick. Is there any discussion? Ms. Autry.
Yes, I just wanted to quickly acknowledge item 19.1. Our many donations that we have received, from $25 all the way up to thousands of dollars from individuals and organizations. Again, folks out there apparently believe in us and support us, and thank you for those donations. Also, I wanted to acknowledge and thank Dick's Sporting Goods Foundation, and item 19.2, for their $75,000 grant to support our Akron Public Schools athletic programs. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Autry. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mrs. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Next, we move to item 23, our business affairs recommendations. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, President Hall. I wanted to recommend the approval of business affairs recommendations presented in Category 23.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's moved by Vice President Autry. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Perry. Is there any discussion? Ms. Autry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I quickly just wanted to acknowledge item 23.10. We're making a payment to the YMCA, but to thank them for partnering with us around the Safety Around Water program. I believe we were able to touch approximately 200 of our students in the district to learn about safety around water. And so I'm looking forward to further partnering with them and other community members so that eventually this is a norm in our district. Thank you.
Roger that. Thank you, Ms. Autry. Is there any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please, Dr. Thompson.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick?
No on 23.10, yes on the rest.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mrs. Autry?
Yes.
Dr. Hall?
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson?
Yes.
So the motion carries 5-1 on all items with the exception of 23.10 and 6-0 on the balance.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Next, we'll move to Superintendent's report. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. I want to thank the first graders at David Hill CLC who sent notes and owl pictures to me. Ms. G's class and Ms. M's class, and I really do take the time to read each individual card and look at each individual picture when kids send. If they take the time to make it, then I'm going to take the time to read it and look at them, and I want to thank them for that. I also want to thank at Mason CLC for the Father Walk. I want to thank the principal there for inviting me to be a part of that. APS Matters, the videos that we're doing are now on our akronschools.com website. The APS Matters link is on the top of the main web page. Then scroll down and click on the YouTube channel. Then click on the videos. Thank you to all of our contributors who have provided funding to us, donations, but also wanted to say thanks to Dick's Sports Foundation through their 75 for 75 sports grant program that gave $75,000 to APS athletic program, $60,000 of that for our middle and high school athletic supplies account, which would be $10,000 per cluster, and then $7,500 for the central athletics equipment account, and they would also, this would be purchases greater than $1,000, such as a recent need for a new ice machine at North, and $7,500 for APS Athletic Hall of Fame induction banquet expenses. That's for the food, awards, and supplies. I had the opportunity to attend the first Energy Power Charge kickoff event at Garfield CLC. They gave us $100,000 to the school that will be used over a 3-year period, so I want to thank them for that. Continuing to do school visits on a weekly basis. The Akron Community Foundation gave an additional $25,000, now totaling $100,000 for a partner broker position for APS Middle School. And want to thank those that are submitting entries for our Be Kind each month. Again, I am happy to share these. It's easy to underestimate the power of a single individual to make a positive impact within our community. The last few board meetings, I have shared kindness activities at schools or in the community, but today I want to share a few single acts of kindness. One of our employees had a flat tire and was sitting in the parking lot until most cars were gone. Adam Motter, our social studies learning specialist, went over to ask if he could help and stayed with the employee until the tire was fixed. Tammy Austin, school climate team member at Voris CLC, brought in an extra fan for a teacher, and also gave trick-or-treat bags to students in another classroom. Custodian night assistant Jason Potter was working the evening shift and took the time to check in with another person who was working late shift. He stopped what he was doing to walk her out to her car and gave a positive and kind ending to someone's workday. Lily Paskey, an art teacher at Harris Jackson, helped new music teacher Jennifer Calhoun learn the skill of teaching on a cart. Lily checks on Jennifer often and provides advice and resources to help her as a first-year teacher. The smallest gestures can brighten someone's day and inspire them to pay it forward, setting off a chain reaction of positivity. I encourage everyone here tonight and listening to take action and be a catalyst for positive change by performing small acts of kindness. Some important dates to remember. This is Hispanic Heritage Month, National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, World Suicide Prevention Day, September the 10th, National Teachers Assistant Day, September the 16th. And I want to say to all of our teaching assistants, our paraprofessionals, we appreciate you far more than we could ever put in words. The work that you do each and every day is to be commended. National IT Professional Day, International Day of Peace, International Day of Sign Language, and Human Resources Professional Day. So we want to recognize those days in this month. And I also want to say thank you to Congresswoman Emilia Strong Sykes for the beautiful letter that I received welcoming me to Akron Public Schools, and Representative Tavia Galinsky from District 33. Thank you as well. I won't read the letters, but I want you to know that I appreciate receiving them and the kind words, and we will certainly be engaging them in further conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Are there any questions? Hearing and seeing none, we'll next move to President's Report. I have nothing tonight. So having said that, we'll go to Treasurer's Report.
I think I've presented enough for one night.
Roger that. Roger that. Okay, next we'll proceed to committee reports, legal, policy, and contracts.
Yes, so we have a first reading of Policy 7300 and Section 18.1, the disposition of real property, personal property, mostly Neola updates because of state law changes. We selected some recommendations based on business affairs. We'll post in the newspaper and things like that, but it's basically simple updates. We met September 18th. And we discussed upcoming Neola updates also, possibly 6240, and it's board revision of complaints and counter complaints to comply with House Bill 126. This is especially important because it's related to the tax valuation of properties in the district, which is critically important right now as we are making sense of and understanding our reevaluations. And that's going to be very important as we learn how to advocate for our district and advocate for our neighbors. We also have second reading of policies in the agenda: 2114, 2271, 5460, and 6325. And the last bit of discussion was we had a first visit from our Director of Technology, Mr. Henshaw, and talked about technology updates or policy updates for technology regarding student and staff use of AI like ChatGPT, which is currently blocked from student Chromebooks. But we started the discussion on embracing technology and creating guidelines for use moving forward. And so look forward to more conversation on that. Our next policy meeting will be October 16th, but that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Molnar. I do believe that to accompany this report out, there are 4 policies, 2114, 2271, 5460, and 6325, that are up for approval tonight. And so I believe to be technically correct, I believe that we need to motion and approve each of the 4 of them individually. So I'll ask for is there a motion to approve policy 2114, which is the meeting state performance indicators? Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's moved by Ms. McKittrick. Is there a second?
Second.
It's seconded by Ms. Jackson. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please, Dr. Thompson.
Ms. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mrs. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to policy 2271, the College Credit Plus program. Is there a motion to approve that policy?
So moved.
It's moved by Ms. McKittrick. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Jackson. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Ms. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Next, we'll move to policy 5460, which is graduation requirements. Is there a motion to approve 5460?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Jackson, seconded by Ms. McKittrick. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Molnar.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries
Excuse me.
6-0.
Excuse me. That's your part. Excuse me. Next, we'll move to policy number 6325, which is the procurement of federal grants funds. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Jackson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice President Autry. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please. Dr. Thompson.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you kindly. Legal Finance and Policy, Legal Contracts and Policy Committee. Next, we'll move to the Finance Committee. Ms. Autry.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hall. And so what we previously discussed is actually what was discussed in our Finance Committee meeting around levies and the 5-year forecast. So I'm looking forward to further information and modeling of what it's going to look like moving forward. And I just want to encourage anybody out there who has questions around the levy, send them to us. Allow us the opportunity to answer those questions. And I just want to say that we should have pride in our district. This is the largest public school district in the county. And so it's not perfect, but it's ours. And so I would just encourage everybody to rally around and let's work together on moving us forward. So please send us your questions. Hopefully we're going to be out in the community to answer them for you and have answers as well at future meetings. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Autry. Are there any further questions or comments? I just want to add here, I just want to thank Ms. Autry for her leadership of that Finance Committee. She's been doing an excellent job So certainly appreciate the strides that committee's taken under your leadership, Ms. Autry, and so thank you kindly for the work that you've been doing. Next, we'll move to instructional policy.
No report.
No report. Okay. And last but not least, equity.
No report.
No report. Okay. We have no unfinished business, but I would like to propose something for new business this evening. So this kind of piggybacks off our earlier levy conversation, so I wanted to float this idea to all of you to kind of just provide some initial feedback on. There are a lot of former board members, school board members, current and former. And so as we think about the passage of a levy, one of the things that has been percolating, I know that we've had, so one of the things that's been percolating in the back of at least my mind, and I think Ms. Autry's heard me say this a little bit, is that wouldn't it be great to find a way to energize not just the current board, but also to galvanize and energize previous serving board members as well in the community. And so there are a lot of those folks in the community that serve in varying capacities. Some of them are on city council, as an example. Some of them, have taken other jobs, right? But they still reside here. Most of them still reside here in Akron, and they have their pockets and constituencies of folks who, at one time or another, supported and voted for them to be on the school board. And so, how do we leverage those collective networks? And so, from there, it got me thinking that in these trying times, and there'll be more times in the future, I'm sure, where board members get asked, previous board members get asked about the actions of a current board. And without a formal venue, if you will, or a gathering for those folks to be able to interact with us in a way that is convenient for all involved, we basically find ourselves not informing the folks that are part of what it really amounts to be a very special and small fraternity, if you will, that is current and previous board members. And so having those things in mind, one of the things that I would like this board to consider supporting, and then I'm not asking for a vote tonight, but I just want to start the conversation about it and just kind of hear thoughts, is what would amount to being at least an annual gathering of previous and current serving board members for the purposes of providing more of not just sort of the bringing together of all of us, what word am I looking for here? The bringing together of that fraternity, but also as a way of informing and soliciting their help on things like levies. And we could come up with an agenda for what that would look like, but again, would like to start to, constitute that fraternity of board members at least on an annual basis, whether it be a report out. We have a new superintendent who is working on a new strategic plan, and so as we're working to galvanize, support, and inform about that as well, it'd be nice if we could bring in the previous board members to those conversations as well, so that way they can be a part of that. And so I'll just stop there and just, again, it's an idea that's not fully fleshed out yet, and so that's why I wanted to bring it here to you all first, just to get your ideas, by addition, subtracting, I think it's a bad idea, I think it's something that's worth massaging or talking more about, but wanted to sort of bring that to this group first and just to get your thoughts. So I'll pause there. Ms. Jackson.
One of my thoughts is that we're always better together, but when I think about galvanizing, that same type of energy and interconnectedness and relationship building, I'm not against, previous board members, but I think about our stakeholders, our community members, our students, our parents, and what that looks like ultimately, too. And I understand that previous board members, as you said, have a constituency, too, that may still support them, that they can activate support with. But I just see the bigger picture, too, with our, really reaching out to and building relationships to the very people who got us elected, that we're in these seats representing. What are their thoughts? What are their feelings? What does that really look like in a very action-based way? that where you're in the community, I don't know what that looks like, but I hear you when you say that about previous board members who are community members too, right? And I just think about the community, and I think about the children we serve. I think about the people in the buildings, our schools, the people around those schools. Do they know us? Do they trust us? Because I think the trust is important when you want people to support a levy, because I think Pat Shipe had mentioned it at one time about, we said we went 13 years without a levy. Yeah, that sounds good, but is it, because we talk about the continuation to where it's like, hey, every 4 years maybe we are going on the ballot and the community is behind it because of the output, because of the collaboration with the city, and like you talk about safety and all those things. Well, that all takes collaboration. If you want our kids to be safe that play in Pee Wee football, right, and in our community and in our neighborhoods, then we need a stronger relationship with our police department and those who in our community who keep our community safe. We have pastors in the audience that talk about violence. Like, what does that look like? What do those community discussions look like? So we're not working in silos in any type of way. Because Pastor Harris, we have people that come regularly to board meetings that have a vested interest, it appears to me. And those, I believe, are the people we need to pull, not just for a levy, but for the outlook of what our schools look like, to tell our story in a negative way, in a positive way, not a negative way all the time, because there are great things happening in Akron that people don't know about. I'm in Akron Public Schools and in Akron, the city. We have a great city with great opportunities. Things are happening. We have a social network and things like that our kids need to be made aware of. That's why I like when they were talking about the leadership, the Mayor's Leadership Academy, and how they'll get the kids out. But anyway, yes, Hall, I do support it, but I just think of another picture of that. Like, where are our community members at, and the people we see, are they at the table as well? Because I think they are very vital to everything that we're doing.
Yeah, and let me just say, so thank you for all that. And so let me just say also that I'm not suggesting an either or here. It's a both and, right? So really this is a tip of the iceberg conversation. So it's not fully baked, and that's why I wanted to bring it to you as it was percolating to kind of get your thoughts and feedback on that. So thank you, Ms. Jackson. I appreciate that. Are there other comments or thoughts? Ms. Autry?
Thank you. And I was going to say the same thing. I look at it as a both and. And I know several of us were sent to this board in 2020. And although we were new, we were sent here for a reason, and people talked to us about specific things. And so, but being in this role has been an eye-opener because we didn't see COVID coming. And so I'm sure there's other things that past board members probably could share with us that we could learn from each other. But it's a given, that we're sent here by the people who voted for us. And I fully expect that we're going to continue to listen to them, because they're the ones who sent us here. And then also, of course, our employees. But I want to see everybody rally. I want to see everybody put their differences aside, and keep the main thing as I've heard, and that's the children, and that's keeping them educated, and not losing ground and moving forward. So I'm open to anyone who's willing to help us. And even if they don't live in the city, they have money. So, hey, we'll take it. But those are my comments. I'm open to building, expanding the coalition, breaking outside of silos, as you stated, because that is very, very accurate. That is happening. And so I look forward to breaking out of that. And again, just wrapping our arms around this district and supporting it and being proud of it, because it's ours.
Thank you, Ms. Autry. Are there other thoughts or comments? Okay. Well, that concludes new business. We have no reason to recess into executive session. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Okay. It's been, we have a motion from Mr. Perry and a second from Vice President Autry. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please, Dr. Thompson.
Dr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mrs. Autry,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Adjourn at 7:19.
All right. Thank you all. We stand in recess.